What if your family's darkest secret wasn't just a secret, but a curse passed down for generations? When I uncovered the truth about the Gardner legacy, I found a hidden world of blood rituals, haunted mirrors, and a spirit trapped between life and death. This is the story they tried to bury forever, and the price I had to pay to break the cycle. Let me start by saying this: if you ever stumble upon a secret your whole family has worked for generations to bury, walk away. Don't dig, don't ask questions, and for the love of God, don't open locked doors in old houses. I learned that the hard way. It all began 2 months ago when my grandma passed away. She was the only person in my family who ever made me feel wanted. My mom and dad died in a car accident when I was 4, and ever since, I was shuffled around like a piece of worn-out furniture. Aunt Rachel took me in but never let me forget I wasn't really hers. My cousins treated me like a stray dog their mom forced them to feed. So when Grandma Rose offered to let me live with her after I turned 18, I jumped at the chance. She was my safe place. But now she was gone. Stroke in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. Her funeral was quiet, barely 10 people showed up. I noticed none of my relatives cried. The day after the burial, I went back to her house, our house, to pack up some of my stuff. It still smelled like her, lavender and old books. I walked into her bedroom and sat on the bed we used to read on together. That's when I noticed something strange. The closet door was ajar, but there was a draft coming from inside. I'd been in that room 100 times and never noticed anything unusual, but this time, something felt off. The draft was cold, and when I stepped inside the walk-in closet, I noticed scuff marks on the wooden floor near the back wall. Like someone had been dragging something across it. Out of pure curiosity, I knocked on the wall. Hollow. And on the right edge, there was a faint seam, just barely visible in the dim light. I felt around and eventually found a small latch, hidden behind an old shoebox. With a twist and a bit of force, the wall creaked open like a door. Behind it? A narrow staircase leading down. I stood there frozen, heart pounding. Grandma never mentioned anything like this. I had no idea there was a basement, much less a secret one. And that was odd, because she told me everything. Or so I thought. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The stairs creaked with every step. It smelled like damp earth and something else, something metallic. Like rust, or maybe blood. My brain tried to rationalize it, but my gut was screaming, don't go down there. But I did. At the bottom, I found a small room with stone walls. There was a single wooden chair in the center, facing a dusty mirror. On the floor sat a locked metal box, about the size of a briefcase. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, like no one had been down here in decades. Except, there were fresh footprints in the dust. I crouched and studied them. Size 9.5 maybe. Smaller than mine. Definitely adult. And they were leading out of the room, not in. That meant someone else had been here. Recently. I opened the box using the small key that had always hung from Grandma's necklace, something I'd kept after the funeral. The lock clicked open, and inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Black and white, yellowed with age. Most of them showed children. Boys and girls standing in front of the same old house. My house. In every photo, the kids were smiling, but their eyes looked terrified. Some of the photos had names scribbled on the back, and I recognized none of them. Except one. My mother. There she was, maybe 9 years old, standing stiffly on the front porch of Grandma's house. Behind her, a shadowy figure loomed in the window. I turned the photo over. In faded ink it read, Catherine, 1982. One of the chosen. The chosen? That's when I heard the door above slammed shut. I ran up the stairs, heart pounding in my ears. But when I got to the top, the closet was open just like before. No one was there. I checked the front and back doors, both locked. I told myself it was just the wind. But then I saw muddy footprints. Leading from the closet, straight to the kitchen. Someone was in the house. I grabbed a bat from the umbrella stand and called out. Who's there? Silence. Then a voice from the shadows, low, female, familiar. You weren't supposed to find that. My blood froze. It was Aunt Rachel. She stepped out from the hallway, arms crossed, staring at me like I was a wild animal. I thought you left, I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. I did. But something told me you'd come back here. She looked at the photos in my hand. Her face darkened. You shouldn't have opened that box. What is this? What the hell does chosen mean? I demanded. She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that changed everything. You think Rose saved you by taking you in? No. She kept you close because she had to. You're part of this whether you want to be or not. Before I could respond, she walked past me, into the closet, and slammed the secret door shut from the inside. I banged on it, yelling her name, but she was gone. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed on the couch, clutching the bat, staring at the closet door. Every creak in the house made me jump. I tried calling Rachel. No answer. Tried my cousin's voicemail. I even went to the police the next day, but the officer looked at me like I was nuts. There's no basement in that house, he said. It's built on a slab. Always has been. I went home and ripped up the floor of the closet. Nothing. No seam. No latch. No draft. Just solid wood. Like it had never existed at all. But I have the photos. I have the box. And I'm starting to think maybe this goes way deeper than just my family. Maybe Grandma was part of something dark. Something old. And maybe, now it's my turn. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. I couldn't. It felt like if I stepped outside, the whole place would vanish. Like the basement, like the photographs, like Aunt Rachel. My reality was breaking apart, and I was clinging to anything solid, those old pictures, the smell of my grandma's quilt, the humming of the fridge. Mundane things kept me sane. But in the back of my mind, one question kept echoing. What did Aunt Rachel mean when she said I was part of this? The word chosen haunted me too. It sounded cultish. Or worse, sacrificial. I dug deeper. Literally. I pried up floorboards in Grandma's closet. Checked behind every wall in the house. I even hired a contractor off Craigslist to come in with a ground-penetrating radar device. I lied and said I thought there was a buried safe. He scanned the whole place. Nothing. Solid concrete slab. No cavity under the house. I showed him the photos. The ones with kids and the old house. He squinted and asked, "Is that from some horror movie?" That shut me up pretty quick. So, I tried a different angle. I took the photos to the local library. It had an archive room with old newspapers on microfilm. I started searching the names scribbled on the backs of the photos. At first, I got nothing. Then I searched. Catherine, 1982, missing child. Boom. There it was. A brief article, buried in the back of a tiny local newspaper. Catherine Miller, 9, was reported missing last Friday afternoon from her family home in Pine Hollow. Last seen walking home from school. Neighbors say she was seen near the home of Rose Gardner, local historian and recluse. That was Grandma. But here's the thing, my mother never told me she was adopted. And Miller wasn't her last name when I knew her. It was Gardner. Like Rose. So, was Catherine Miller my mother before she became Catherine Gardner? I needed answers. And the only person still alive who might have them was Aunt Rachel. So I went to her house. No one answered the door. I knocked for 10 minutes. Just as I was about to leave, the door creaked open a few inches. I froze. My heart pounded. "Rachel?" I called. Nothing. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. The house was silent, eerily so. Furniture covered in plastic. Family photos turned face down. The kitchen clock was stuck at 3:33. And then I heard it. A faint thumping. Like someone knocking, softly, on wood. I followed the sound to the basement. Every instinct told me to run, but I kept going. The steps creaked under my weight. The smell down there hit me hard, mold, old water, and something metallic. At the bottom was an empty concrete room. Bare bulbs swinging from the ceiling. A metal table, and on it, a book. Not just any book. A black leather-bound journal. Grandma's handwriting on the cover. The line must be kept. I opened it. The first page was a family tree. I saw names I recognized, Rose, Rachel, my mother Catherine. And then, me? Next to my name. Final vessel? I flipped through the pages. They were filled with strange rituals, names of children, dates, cryptic phrases like, "Bind the soul in blood," and, "Only one can carry the weight." It didn't make any sense. Until I reached the last few entries. Dated only months before Grandma's death. "The dreams have returned. The watchers are stirring. I fear Lily will be too late. But if he sees the signs, if he opens the door, he may still fulfill the purpose." Lily? There was no Lily in the family tree. And no Lily in our family, at least, not one I'd ever heard of. I snapped photos of every page and booked it out of there. But just as I reached the front door, I heard a whisper. Not like someone talking from another room. It was inside my head. "You're close." I spun around, bat raised, but no one was there. I didn't sleep again that night. Instead, I started digging into the names on the family tree. And that's when things got worse. 3 of the names listed had obituaries from different years, each one marked accidental death. But all of them were under 12 years old. One drowned in a bathtub. One fell from a second-story window. And one disappeared entirely. Declared dead after 7 years missing. All listed in towns near where my family had lived over the past 60 years. I started to feel sick. What kind of legacy was I tied to? The next day, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a VHS tape. Just one word written on it in red sharpie, Lily. I didn't even own a VHS player. So I drove to the nearest pawn shop and bought one for $15. When I got home, I popped the tape in and sat down with my heart in my throat. The screen was black for a few seconds. Then it crackled to life. It was a home video. Someone, Grandma, maybe, was filming a little girl in a nightgown, sitting on the floor of the secret basement I thought didn't exist. Same chair. Same mirror. The girl looked to be about 5 or 6. Pale skin. Bright green eyes. Hair in messy curls. The camera zoomed in. She looked straight at it and whispered, "He's not ready yet." Then the screen went static. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me I had to. "Stop digging," the voice said. Low. Male. Measured. "Who is this?" I asked. "If you keep going, you'll end up like Lily." Then the line went dead. I called the police. Again. They showed up, looked at me like I was losing my mind, and told me to get some rest. The tape? Gone. When I showed them the VHS player, and told them about the package, one officer, an older guy, paused. "What was the name written on the tape again?" he asked. "Lily." He exchanged a look with his partner, then said, "There's no one by that name tied to this property. But there was a girl named Lily Gardner who went missing in 1993. Unsolved case. Strange circumstances." My blood ran cold. I was born in 95. And I'd never heard of a Lily Gardner in my life. But maybe that's exactly how my family wanted it. I couldn't stop thinking about the girl on the tape. Lily Gardner. Missing since 1993. That would make her about 2 years older than me, assuming she was still alive. But how had I never heard of her? My grandma talked about the family often, stories, recipes, traditions, but never once mentioned Lily. It was like she'd been erased. The police were no help. They looked at me like I was chasing ghosts. Maybe I was. But if so, I had a feeling those ghosts had names, and they were all buried under my family tree. I needed help. Real help. So I reached out to the only person I could trust outside of my dysfunctional circle, Danny. Danny was my best friend growing up, and if there's one thing she's never been scared of, it's weird sh*t, paranormal podcasts, conspiracy theories, the occult. She was deep into all of it. We hadn't spoken much since college, but when I texted her, "Hey, ever heard of spirit vessels and secret family cults?" she replied in under 5 seconds. "On my way." She showed up with a laptop, a duffel bag full of ghost hunting gear, and 2 Red Bulls. "All right," she said, walking through the front door. "Tell me everything." So I did. The photos, the hidden basement, the journal, the VHS tape, the police blowing me off, and most importantly, the name Lily. Danny's face went pale when I mentioned the girl in the nightgown. "You still have the footage?" she asked. "No. The tape disappeared." She didn't look surprised. "Stuff like this, it wants to stay hidden," she said. "But the fact that you saw her means she wants you to know." "Know what?" "That depends. Was she trying to warn you, or replace you?" That question shook me. We got to work. Danny started digging into old property records and newspaper archives. She found something I hadn't thought to check, old census data. And sure enough, in 1990, Rose Gardner listed 2 grandchildren under her roof, Catherine's son, me, and Lily Gardner, female, age 5. But in 2000, I was the only one listed. 10 years. 10 years for a child to vanish from the records. No mention. No obituary. Not even a missing persons report in public databases. It was like the family just deleted her. "I think she died here," Danny said that night, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the living room floor. "In this house. And I think your family covered it up." "But why?" Danny tapped the journal I found in Aunt Rachel's basement, the one with the family tree. "Because she was supposed to be the vessel," she said. "But something went wrong." She flipped to a page I hadn't paid attention to before. It was a drawing, a ritual circle with strange symbols I didn't recognize. Around the edges were scribbled notes. "The vessel must be bloodborne. Cannot pass to outsider. Only one may carry the weight." "What does that mean?" "It means you were never supposed to be the one," Danny said softly. "She was. But when she disappeared, they needed a replacement. Me." My hands were shaking. I needed air. I stepped outside and sat on the porch, watching the wind rustle the tall grass. In the silence, I realized I hadn't grieved my grandmother at all. I hadn't even processed her death because everything since then had been chaos. Had she known? Did she want me to find all this? Or had she tried to stop it? That night, Danny stayed over. We set up motion sensors in the hallway and by the closet, just in case the hidden door ever reappeared. At 3:33 a.m., every single sensor went off. We bolted upright. Danny checked her monitor. "Movement in the closet," she whispered. I grabbed the bat again. At this point, I should have named it. We crept into Grandma's room. Nothing. Until I saw it. A faint line on the closet floor. The seam was back. I knelt and felt along the edge. The same latch. Same cold draft. "It's here," I whispered. This time, Danny came with me. We both descended the stairs slowly, flashlights trembling in our hands. The basement looked just like before, but something was different. The mirror was gone. In its place was a painting, an oil portrait, thick with texture and shadows. It showed a young girl standing in a forest clearing. She wore the same nightgown from the tape. And her eyes? They were bleeding. I backed away, bumping into the chair. It toppled over with a crash, and that's when we heard the whisper. Not a voice this time. A name. Lily. The sound echoed all around us. Danny grabbed my arm. We need to go. We ran up the stairs, slammed the closet door shut, and blocked it with furniture. Neither of us slept. The next morning, Danny sat across from me with a grim look on her face. I think this is a generational ritual. I've read about stuff like this. Some families, they bind something ancient. Something evil. And every generation, one member is chosen to hold it inside them. To keep it from escaping. My stomach turned. So you're saying Lily was supposed to be the prison? Yes. But she died before the ritual could finish. That's why your name was written as final vessel. They passed it to you. I stared down at my hands. Nothing about my life felt normal anymore. What happens if I reject it? Danny didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up an old video from an online forum, some occultist explaining bloodline curses. He mentioned a word I'd seen in the journal. Valeth. Danny paused the video. That's the name of the entity. It's bound to your family's bloodline. And if you don't complete the cycle, it escapes. And if I do complete it, you carry it. Forever. You become the prison. I laughed, but it wasn't real laughter. It was hollow. Terrified. So those were my options. Be possessed, or unleash a monster? That's when we heard the scream. A single, sharp wail from inside the house. We ran from the kitchen to the hallway, and the mirror by the front door had cracked down the center. On the glass, drawn in what looked like blood, were the words. She was never the first. Danny whispered. Then who was? She was never the first. Those words stayed burned into my brain long after we scrubbed the mirror clean. If Lily wasn't the first vessel, then who was? How far back did this thing go? That afternoon, Danny and I sat on the back porch in silence, staring out at the overgrown garden. Grandma used to keep it perfectly trimmed. Now it looked like the earth was trying to swallow the house whole. Danny finally broke the silence. I think we need to go see someone. Who? She pulled out her phone and showed me a contact. The name read. Marion Fields, genealogy consultant. She's not just a genealogist. Danny explained. She's also into folklore and occult family histories. If anyone can help us make sense of this, it's her. I didn't care how weird it sounded. I was already in deep. So we packed up the journal, the photos, and the family tree and drove 3 hours to a town called Ashridge, where Marion lived in a converted church at the edge of a forest. She was in her 70s, sharp as a knife, and somehow already knew my last name before we introduced ourselves. Gardner, she said, her voice rasping like dried leaves. I haven't heard that name in a long time. She ushered us inside, motioned toward the old pews now converted into benches, and took the journal from my hands. Her eyes scanned it quickly, too quickly, like she already knew what it was. When she looked up, her face had gone pale. You need to leave this place, she said quietly. This house. This town. All of it. I shook my head. Not until I get answers. Marion looked at me for a long time. Then she said something that shattered the floor under my feet. Rose wasn't the first gardener to try and contain Valeth. She was the last. She flipped to a page near the back of the journal and tapped on a symbol. This is an old binding rune. Used in some of the oldest blood rituals in North America, passed down from pre-colonial cults. It doesn't just contain evil, it ties it to blood. She paused. Your blood. My throat tightened. So how far back does it go? Marion hesitated, then walked to an old wooden cabinet and pulled out a massive binder. Inside were records, birth certificates, death records, photos, and letters. She opened to a page labeled Eleanor Gardner, 1812. She was the first. According to Marion, Eleanor was accused of witchcraft during the Second Great Awakening. She wasn't executed, but instead, vanished from public life. Local folklore claimed she made a pact with something she called the Pale Star, which later translated into the entity we now knew as Valeth. Every generation after her had a carrier. Someone born under specific circumstances, always from the female bloodline. They were marked, often with birthmarks shaped like spirals or rings. I froze. I had a scar on my ribs, always thought it was from a childhood fall. But it was circular, with 3 tiny notches at the edge. Danny looked at me, her face pale. You've had that scar your whole life, right? Yeah, why? Marion answered for her. Because it's not a scar. It's a sigil. I sat down hard, the air knocked out of me. So what does this thing want from me? Marion looked at me with a sadness I didn't understand. It wants to live through you. To exist outside the binding. If the vessel dies before the ritual is complete, it weakens. But if the vessel accepts it, willingly, it gets stronger. That's why your grandmother watched you so closely. She was trying to buy time. Delay the passing. I whispered. What happens if I don't go through with it? Marion was quiet for a long time. Then it looks for someone else in the bloodline. My mind raced. There's no one else. My mom's gone. Lily's. My breath caught in my throat. What if Lily wasn't gone? What if they'd found a way to trap her between life and death, to keep the binding intact without a physical vessel? We left Marion's place in stunned silence. The whole ride back, I felt like my body was floating outside of itself. Back home, Danny went to lie down, and I sat in Grandma's room, staring at the mirror that had cracked the night before. But now, it was whole again. Untouched. Perfectly smooth. My reflection stared back, but something felt wrong. The angle was off. The lighting didn't match the room. And then, slowly, my reflection smiled. I didn't. I stumbled back, heart hammering. In the mirror, my reflection stepped forward, as if trying to come through the glass. Then it vanished. I screamed for Danny, who ran in with her EMF reader and camera. No spikes. No footage. It's messing with you, she said. Trying to break your will. That's how it wins. We agreed to sleep in shifts. She took the first watch. At 3:33 a.m., again, I woke to the sound of humming. Soft, sweet, childlike. I got up and followed the sound down the hallway. It was coming from the closet. The seam was back. This time, it was open. I grabbed a flashlight and looked inside. No stairs. Just a mirror. Propped up against the back wall, right where the opening had been before. And reflected in that mirror? A child's bedroom. Old-fashioned. Wallpaper peeling. Stuffed animals sitting in silence. And in the center, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Lily. Alive. She looked up and met my eyes. Then mouthed something I'll never forget. Help me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Lily's mouth moved again. Help me. Not screamed. Not cried. Just said. Calm. Pleading. Her green eyes locked with mine through the glass, even though I knew she wasn't on the other side of the closet. She was somewhere else entirely. Another place. Another layer of reality. I reached out, and as soon as my fingers brushed the mirror's surface, I felt it. Cold, wet, almost pulsing beneath the glass. Not just a reflection, but a barrier. Danny! I shouted, heart racing. She ran into the room, eyes wide. I backed away from the mirror and pointed. She's in there. Lily's in there. But when Danny looked, the reflection was gone. The mirror showed only our tired, terrified faces. Are you sure? She asked gently. I saw her. She spoke to me. She wants out. Danny walked over and ran her fingers along the mirror's frame. Then she tapped the glass. This isn't a mirror anymore, she said. It's a window. That night, we tried everything to make it open again. EMF sweeps, black lights, playing back Lily's humming. But nothing worked. Then Danny had an idea. What if the trigger is you? I blinked. Me? You're the current vessel, right? What if the mirror responds to your presence, your blood? She pulled out a small pocket knife. I didn't hesitate. I sliced a shallow line across my palm and pressed it against the mirror. It was like flipping a switch. The glass shimmered, rippled like water, and then we were staring back into Lily's room. She sat in the same place, hands in her lap. But this time, when she looked up, she didn't mouth the words. She spoke. I'm not dead, she whispered. Danny stared in shock. Oh my God! Lily looked straight at me. They didn't kill me. They bound me. I knelt down, my bloody hands still touching the glass. Lily, I'm your cousin. I think. I'm the one they chose after you. Her face changed, somewhere between relief and heartbreak. You don't have much time. Why? What are they doing? She hesitated, then said. Grandma didn't finish the ritual. She tried to stop it. Tried to use me to trap it forever. But she failed. She was trying to save us? I asked. Yes. But it wasn't enough. Vela still moves through the bloodline. I looked over at Danny, who was filming everything with wide eyes. Lily continued. They'll come for you soon. You're too close to the truth now. Who's they? But Lily didn't answer. Her eyes widened, and she screamed. Behind you! I turned just in time to see a shadow flicker through the hallway behind us. The mirror's surface shattered. Not outward, inward, as though it had been pulled from the other side. Everything went dark. When I woke up, Danny was already sitting up, rubbing her head. The mirror was intact again. No shimmer. No Lily. But my palm? It was burned. Not just a cut anymore, burned, in the shape of that same circular sigil. We didn't say a word. Just packed our bags and left the house. We went to a motel an hour away. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily. Not as she was in the mirror, but older. Eyes hollow. Skin stretched. Like time was eating her alive. The next morning, Danny sat at the motel table, laptop open, scribbling notes. I think we're dealing with something way older than your family, she said. Valeth may have used the gardeners for generations, but I don't think it started with them. Then where? She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a symbol, same one from my palm burn. It was etched into the stone of a crumbled chapel in Wales. The article said the symbol dated back to the 6th century. Blood vessels, spirit prisons, mirrored gateways. This thing has been using people for centuries. Danny whispered. Your family didn't create it. They inherited it. I leaned back, heart thudding. But why me? I don't know, Danny said. But I think Lily's existence bought you time. I think when she was trapped, the cycle paused. But now that she's reaching out, trying to escape, it's starting again. Just then, my phone rang. No caller ID. I answered with a shaking hand. A child's voice whispered on the other end. You let her out. Now something else is coming in. Click. I dropped the phone. That night, we drove back to the house, against every ounce of common sense, because I had to know. I had to see. When we got there, the front door was already open. Inside, the walls were covered in black veins. Not paint. Not mold. Something alive. And the mirror? Gone. In its place, carved into the drywall, were the words. Welcome home, vessel. Danny grabbed my arm. We can't stay here. But I was frozen. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. My burned palms started to throb, harder, sharper. And then I heard it. A soft voice, echoing from the walls. From the floor. From inside me. Let me in. Let me in. The voice crawled under my skin like ice water in my veins. It wasn't just echoing in the room, it was inside my mind, whispering like it had always been there, waiting for me to hear it. I staggered back from the wall. Danny grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. We have to go. Right now. But I couldn't move. The words carved into the drywall, welcome home, vessel, were glowing faintly, like embers. My burned palm began to sting worse, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. Let me in. No. I muttered, pressing my hand against my chest like I could shove the voice back down. You're not real. But Danny's face was pale, her eyes wide. You said that thing's name was Valeth, right? I nodded slowly. She pointed to the hallway. Etched into the wall in deep gouges were letters. We hadn't noticed them before. A single line. Valeth isn't the curse. She's the prisoner. I froze. What? Danny backed away. What if this whole time, we got it wrong? What if Lily wasn't just trapped? What if she's the one keeping Valeth in? I thought back to Lily's voice through the mirror. Help me. The sadness. The calm desperation. Not fear. Not rage. Sacrifice. She wasn't running from Valeth. She was Valeth's cage. The vessel. And now I'd broken her out. A wave of nausea hit me as it all clicked. Grandma never told me about Lily because she wasn't ashamed. She was protecting the world from what Lily had become. That's why the secret door vanished. That's why the mirror shattered. Because I broke the chain. Because I was next. Suddenly, every light in the house went out. The silence that followed was deafening. Danny grabbed my wrist. We have to seal it. Now. I blinked. Seal what? She pulled out Grandma's journal and flipped to the page with the binding circle. This. It's a blood lock. If we perform it before the entity crosses into you fully, we can push it back. But we don't have the materials. Then we improvise. We raced to the living room. Danny began drawing the symbol onto the hardwood floor using salt from the kitchen, ash from the fireplace, and the blood from my palm. She muttered the words from the journal phonetically. Sanctum ferrum. Vinctum perlinium. Audi me. Claude portam. Suddenly, the walls began to shake. Dust rained from the ceiling. The black veins pulsed and twisted like they were alive, retreating from the circle Danny had drawn. And then we heard it. Not a whisper. Not a voice. A scream. But not human. It sounded like thousands of broken voices howling from inside one throat. A banshee's wail, a child's cry, a guttural growl all tangled into one nightmare sound. The room trembled. Pictures fell from the walls. Cracks splintered across the floor. Then, silence. We stood frozen. Nothing moved. And then, from the top of the stairs, a soft voice said, Why did you try to lock me away again? We turned slowly. Lily stood at the top of the staircase. Only, it wasn't really Lily anymore. Her green eyes were solid black now. Not like pupils, like holes. Her hands floated at her sides, and her feet hovered 2 inches above the ground. She smiled, and it wasn't a child's smile. It was ancient. Rose tried, she said. But you opened the door with love. You believed I needed help. I stepped back into the circle, but she didn't flinch. She floated down 1 step, then another. Danny pulled out a crucifix she kept in her pocket, her grandmother's, and held it up like a weapon. Stay back. Lily's smile widened. That's not for me. Then she looked at me. You were never meant to carry it. Your blood is diluted. Weak. Then what do you want from me? She stepped to the edge of the circle and stopped. To finish what they couldn't. She held out her hand. And just for a second, I saw her again. Not the creature. Not the prison. Just a scared little girl. Begging to be free. Please, she whispered. It hurts. And that was the worst part. Because I believed her. I felt it deep in my bones. The pain. The endless isolation. She wasn't just some monster. She'd been used, by generations. Trapped as a child. Twisted by rituals she never chose. This wasn't a haunting. It was inheritance. Suddenly, Danny grabbed my arm and pulled me back. Don't. That's not her anymore. I don't think it was ever fully her to begin with. I stepped forward, still inside the circle, and looked into Lily's hollow eyes. If I take it, if I become the vessel, will she be free? She didn't answer. But she lowered her hand. And said just one word. Yes. My hand throbbed. The sigil on my palm flared like fire. Danny was yelling at me, grabbing my shoulders, trying to pull me back. But in that moment, I knew what I had to do. Not because I was brave. Not because I was chosen. But because no one else would do it. I reached out my hand. And touched hers. The second our hands touched, everything stopped. No, not just stopped. Everything was erased. The walls of the house vanished. The floor disappeared. Danny's voice cut off mid-scream. And the world went silent. Not quiet, silent. No heartbeat, no breath, no thought. Just nothing. Then came the darkness. Thick, endless, alive. It wasn't like being blind, it was like being unmade. Like I no longer existed in a body. I was just floating thought. A spark caught in black static. And then I was somewhere else. A place that didn't have shape or time or direction. I stood, if you could call it that, on something that looked like cracked glass stretching into an infinite void. Above me, the sky was made of smoke. Shadows moved through it like fish through water. And ahead of me was Lily. But not the child I'd seen in the mirror. This version of her stood tall. Her skin was cracked like porcelain, glowing faintly from within. Her eyes were galaxies, spinning, shifting, screaming. She wore a dress made of memories, photographs, scraps of letters, names I didn't recognize but felt like I should. You came, she said. I tried to speak, but I didn't have a mouth anymore. Somehow, she heard me anyway. What is this place? This is the in-between, she said. Where the vessel lives. I looked around. Where's Valeth? She tilted her head. You still don't understand. The shadows in the sky began to descend, slowly, like birds gliding toward their prey. I watched as they got closer. They weren't shadows at all. They were people. Children. Dozens of them. Some were smiling. Some crying. Some with empty eyes. I recognized a few from the photos in Grandma's metal box. The chosen. You said you weren't the first, I said. That someone else started it. I didn't lie. Lily whispered. But I didn't tell you everything either. She stepped closer and reached out to touch my forehead. The moment she did, memories that weren't mine flooded into me. Pain. Screams. A girl tied to a chair, the mirror glowing in front of her. Blood dripping from her nose. An old woman chanting words in a language older than English. Hands pressing down on her shoulders. A voice whispering from behind the glass. Let me out. And then. Her. Not Lily. Not Valeth. Something older. A being made of light and rot and hunger. Something trapped, not by cruelty, but by choice. The Gardeners didn't imprison a demon. They contained a god. One of their own making. A god born from trauma, from grief, from generations of pain passed down like heirlooms. The true curse wasn't Valeth. It was the family's fear. Their refusal to let go. Their obsession with legacy, with control, with keeping the line alive. Valeth wasn't a monster. She was the result. And I had taken her place. I stumbled back, choking on the realization. You lied to me. Lily's eyes filled with tears. No. I gave you the choice they never gave me. Why me? Why now? Because you cared enough to ask. And strong enough to carry what they couldn't. The children gathered around me now, staring. Not maliciously. Not hungrily. Just waiting. For what? I asked. To be remembered. Lily whispered. They live here now. Inside you. You're the vessel, but you're also the storyteller. The cracked glass beneath me began to light up, each fracture glowing with the faces of those who had come before. Rose. Eleanor. Even my mother. All of them had touched this place. But none had survived it with their mind intact. I felt it pressing against me, every memory, every scream, every ritual, every loss. I dropped to my knees, trying not to splinter apart. I can't hold all this. I gasped. Lily knelt beside me, her glowing hand resting over the sigil on my palm. You don't have to hold it, she said softly. You just have to tell it. Suddenly, I was back. I woke up on the living room floor, gasping for air, my face soaked in tears and blood. Danny was shaking me, yelling my name. The mirror was gone. The carvings were gone. The house looked normal. Empty. Quiet. Like nothing had ever happened. But when I looked down at my palm, the sigil was still there. Only now, it glowed faintly, like embers waiting to flare. Danny was crying. I thought I lost you. You stopped breathing. You were gone for over 5 minutes, just collapsed. I sat up slowly. My body felt heavier. Like I was carrying centuries on my shoulders. I'm okay, I whispered. You saw her, didn't you? I nodded. Did she tell you how to stop it? I shook my head. She is the stop. She held it back all this time. And now, it's my turn. Danny stared at me. What does that mean? It means I have to leave. Where? I don't know yet. But I can't stay here. Because I wasn't just carrying Lily's story now. I was carrying them all. I left the house the next morning before the sun came up. No note. No goodbye. Just me, Danny's spare car, and a worn backpack full of the journal, the old photos, and a single cassette tape labeled Rose, final entry. I found it tucked in the back of the bookshelf just before I walked out the door. Like it wanted to be found. Danny begged me not to go. Said there had to be another way. But I couldn't drag her any deeper into this. She'd already seen more than any outsider was meant to. I headed west. Not toward anyone or anything in particular. Just away. Away from the Gardner home, from the mirror, from the hollow stare in Lily's eyes when she whispered, "You just have to tell it." At first, I didn't know what that meant. But the further I got from the house, the more I began to understand. This wasn't about stopping a curse. It was about breaking silence. Every generation of Gardners had tried to hide what they were. Tried to bury the darkness, to contain it in secret rituals, to tie it up in blood and basements and mirrors. But secrets rot. And when you rot something for long enough, it grows teeth. So I started telling the story. Not all of it, no one would believe that. But pieces. Bits and fragments. On forums. In podcasts. Through anonymous emails to local reporters. I even called Marion and gave her everything I had, names, locations, dates, journal pages. And each time I told a part of the story, the pressure inside me lessened. The sigil on my palm faded a little more. Lily had been right. I didn't have to hold it. I just had to share it. Spread it wide enough that it couldn't root itself in secrecy again. But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Because the Gardners weren't just victims of the curse. Some of them embraced it. 3 weeks after I left, I got an email from Danny. Subject line: "They're looking for you." The message was short. Saw a black car outside the house. Same one that followed us after Marion's. Thought it was nothing, but now I'm not sure. Please be careful. I started seeing the same car in my rearview mirror. Sometimes far behind. Sometimes way too close. I began switching motels every 2 nights. Using cash. Tracing my steps backward. I even considered ditching the country altogether. But then I remembered the cassette tape. Rose, final entry. I borrowed a dusty tape player from a pawn shop in Arizona, sat alone in a motel room lit by a flickering lamp, and pressed play. At first, all I heard was static. Then my grandmother's voice crackled through. "If you're hearing this, then the blood has chosen you. And I am so sorry." She sounded tired. Older than I remembered. This curse didn't begin with Eleanor. She wasn't the first vessel. She was the first to rebel. Before her, we served it. Worshipped it. Believed that carrying the pain of the others made us holy. That our bloodline was divine. But Eleanor saw it for what it was. A parasite. One that feeds on silence, on secrets, on shame. She fought to end it, and failed. I tried to finish what she started. But I failed too. She paused. I heard the scrape of a chair leg. A soft sigh. "Your mother. Catherine, she knew. That's why she left. She tried to protect you from it. But bloodlines don't forget. And they don't forgive." Another pause. "If you've made it this far, you already know about Lily. She was the strongest of us. She held it longer than any child should have. When she couldn't contain it anymore, I trapped her the only way I knew how. I made her the house." I sat up straight, blood running cold. Not just in it. Of it. The walls, the mirrors, the space in between, it's all her now. That's why you must never go back. The house remembers. And if it sees you again, it'll finish what I couldn't. The tape clicked off. I stared at the player in stunned silence. Lily was the prison. But not just spiritually. She was fused to the home. Her body might have died, but her essence was in the walls. And when I freed her, I hadn't just set her soul loose. I'd woken the house. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The basement that appeared and vanished. The mirror that bled and shimmered. The voices inside the walls. The cracks that glowed. The scent of old blood and dust and memory. The house was alive. And I had been born in it. Raised inside it. Trained by it. I was meant to return. That night, I dreamed of the house. Not a nightmare. More like a call. The front door opened for me. The floorboards whispered. The walls pulsed with slow heartbeats. And at the end of the hallway stood Lily, half her face a little girl, half ancient light, holding out her hand again. But this time she didn't say, "Help me," she said. "Finish it." I woke with a jolt, heart pounding. And I knew what I had to do. I arrived just before midnight. The Gardner house looked smaller than I remembered, but somehow more alive. Like it had been breathing while I was away, feeding on the silence left behind. The porch light flickered as I stepped onto the front steps. The door wasn't locked. It was waiting for me. Inside, the air was thick. Still. Like the house hadn't exhaled in weeks. I moved slowly, flashlight in one hand, the sigil on my palm glowing faintly like a compass guiding me deeper. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Except for one thing. The mirror in Grandma Rose's room was back. Not cracked. Not bleeding. Clean. Polished. Almost inviting. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I walked down the hallway toward the closet, the one with the secret stairs that had vanished before. The seam was there again. This time, it was wide open. No latch. No draft. Just cold stone steps descending into black. I took one deep breath. And I went down. The basement was different. No chairs. No candles. No altar. Just a circle of mirrors, 7 of them, arranged in a wide ring, each one facing inward. Their frames were blackened, warped, as if burned. And in the center of the circle was a body. It wasn't decomposed. It wasn't rotting. It was preserved. A young girl. Barely 10. Wearing a faded white nightgown. Her arms crossed over her chest. I shut, face peaceful. Lily. Or what was left of her. My legs nearly gave out. She had been here the whole time. I knelt beside her, shaking, the flashlight flickering in my hand. Her body didn't move, but something in the air shifted. The mirrors around me began to shimmer. And then, they showed reflections. Not of the room. Not of me. Of the past. Each mirror flickered like an old television, playing memories from generations before. I saw women standing in front of altars. Children being marked. Blood pouring from eyes. Chants. Prayers. Screams. And then, I saw Eleanor. Standing at the same spot I was now, holding a blade in one hand and a bundle of cloth in the other. She wasn't trying to summon something. She was trying to end it. But before she could finish, 2 men dragged her away. Her screams echoed through the mirror, and the blade fell to the ground. The ritual was never completed. That was the root of it. The curse didn't come from the ritual, it came from stopping it halfway. From binding pain and grief and blood into a vessel that was never meant to last. Eleanor had tried to free them all. And the others made sure she couldn't. I stood, heart racing, and turned in a slow circle. Lily? I said softly. The air trembled. One of the mirrors shimmered, and her face appeared. She looked older than before. Tired. Worn. But still her. You found me. She whispered. I found the truth. I said. You weren't just a vessel. You were the key. She nodded. But I wasn't the only one. I stared at her. What do you mean? Another mirror shimmered. And this time, my mother appeared. Catherine Gardner. Tears in her eyes. And then another. Grandma Rose. Her face hollow. Regretful. Then another. Eleanor. Her hands still stained with blood, centuries later. They were all here. Watching. Waiting. Why me? I whispered. Lily's voice echoed from every mirror at once. Because you're the last one who still has a choice. I stepped back into the center of the circle, where her body lay. The sigil on my palm began to burn. The mirrors began to vibrate. The air grew thick, pulsing with power, with memory, with thousands of years of silence trying to speak all at once. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I took out the cassette tape, the one marked Rose, final entry. I snapped it open, revealing the magnetic ribbon inside. Then I poured a line of it around Lily's body. I took out the pages from the journal, laid them in a ring around the circle. And finally, I took the blade I'd brought with me, a simple hunting knife. I carved a symbol into the floor. Not the binding sigil. The severing one. The same symbol Eleanor had tried to carve before they dragged her away. The ritual they never let her finish. The one that would end the curse, not bind it. As I finished the last line, the room began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The mirrors screamed. But I didn't stop. I pressed my burning palm into the center of the sigil and whispered the words Danny had found, the words Marion had translated, the ones Rose had feared. Let this end with me. Light exploded from the circle. The mirrors shattered, one by one, each with a deafening crack. Lily's body dissolved into dust. The sigil on my palm burned white-hot, then vanished. And then... silence. Real silence. Peaceful. Final. I stood in the center of the ruins, smoke rising around me, the air lighter than it had ever been. It was over. The line was broken. It's been 6 months since that night, in the basement. I haven't gone back to the house. I never will. After the ritual, I walked out of there as the sun was rising. The Gardner home looked dead. Hollow. The porch light no longer flickered. The air no longer buzzed with tension. The black veins were gone. Even the birds had returned to the trees around it. For the first time in generations, the house was just a house. I didn't look back. I drove until the roads felt unfamiliar again. I changed my name. Found a quiet town with quiet people who didn't ask questions. Took a job in a used bookstore. Paid in cash. Lived small. Sometimes I still feel her. Not in a haunting way. Not like before. More like a memory. A warm echo. Lily. She never asked to be any part of this. She was a kid, forgotten by a family obsessed with secrets and silence and sacrifice. She held on to that curse for so long, longer than any of us had the right to expect. And when she finally passed it to me, she did it not out of spite, but hope. Hope that maybe I'd do what they couldn't. That maybe I'd listen. That maybe I'd tell the truth. I kept my promise. I wrote it all down. Everything. I published it under a fake name, buried in internet forums, obscure blogs, even slipped some chapters into a horror anthology submission. People thought it was fiction. That's fine by me. Because if just one person reads it and starts asking questions, the silence is broken. The curse fed on secrecy. Now it's starving. Danny still checks in sometimes. She says the house is still standing, but no one's lived there since I left. She told me someone bought the land a few weeks ago, planning to tear it down and build condos. Let them. Burn the past if it helps. But part of me wonders. Will the walls remember? Will the soil forget the voices buried beneath it? I don't know. What I do know is this. My palm no longer burns. The sigil is gone. Faded like a scar from a life I don't live anymore. I sleep through the night now. No humming. No mirrors shifting when I'm not looking. No voices calling from the walls. Just dreams. Sometimes they're of Lily, standing in a field at dusk, barefoot, smiling. Peaceful. Sometimes I dream of Eleanor. Sometimes, of Rose. But they never speak. They just stand there, watching. Not haunting me. Just making sure I remember. Making sure I keep telling the story. The end.